angel came to see Mary. She was doing laundry, and then the angel just appeared and she was really scared. So Gabriel was like, Mary, you're gonna have, I can't say it good. Mary, you're gonna have a baby. You're gonna have a baby and you will call him Jesus. And then Mary was like, I'm not gonna have a baby yet. I'm only a teenager. I'm not married. Then the angel Gabriel told Joseph that Mary is not lying. You are having a new baby. And so they met up. They went to Bethlehem, which was Joseph's old town. They ride a donkey. I don't know. A camel. Oh, yeah, a camel. She said, this donkey's fast. They tried to go to a hotel, and they asked the keeper for a place to stay. The keeper said, we have no rooms. Literally, no rooms. So Mary and Joseph walked away sadly, but then he said, the only place here in Bethlehem that you can stay is a stable. And then he just pointed the way and they followed. When the shepherds were taking care of the sheep, then they saw angels. The angel said, a new baby is getting born, who is King of the Jews. The angel were singing. Glorious. And then the shepherd said, I think we should go there and meet him. The second, I think, said, yeah, I agree with you. And the other said, yeah, me too. They had to walk through a bunch of grass and bushes, maybe have to camp out a night. And then the wise men heard about it, and then a star appeared. We should probably follow that star. It's pointing down to the barn. So maybe we should follow it. Maybe. So the wise men went to Jesus. They gave them gifts. A stuffed animal, like a hippo one, to have at home. Some diapers, and some wipes, and some milk, some shoes, some Jordans. Gold ring and Latimer. And I don't know how I would survive in that barn. Too stinky, too crowded, and ugh. I think he probably pooped because the room was very smelly. Thank you for coming. He's adorable. He's gonna be our best friend. I love you, and you're the best baby I ever seen. There, I said it. The new baby is gonna change the world.
Good morning. Wasn't that fun? So now what I want you to do is I want you to compare the video that you just saw with the traditional nativity set. How many of you guys have a nativity set up in your home? Okay. Now I want you to think for a minute, and if there's anything that's inaccurate or wrong that you saw either in the video or in your nativity set, we're going to talk about it for a minute, because there were some things that were wrong. There were inaccuracies in that video, as cute as it was. I'm not going to try to be the Grinch this morning and wreck anybody's Christmas, but I have a purpose for this, so just hang in there with me, okay? All right, how about the wise men? Were they there at the birth of Jesus? No, they weren't. How many of you have wise men set up in your home? We have 4 wise men. 3 came with the set. And me makes 4. Man, I wish my wife was sitting closer. She didn't read my notes this time. She wouldn't do it, so I had to throw that in there. You know that 3 gifts were mentioned, right? But there was no mention of 3 wise men. It could have been 2, right? Right? Maybe. Could have been 10. I don't know. How about the star? Didn't really need a star, right? If the wise men. You guys are quiet. Is this new? How many of this is new to any of you? There was no star. I mean, there were stars in the sky, but the star that the wise men followed didn't need to be there 2 years before. You're looking at me with frowny face. We'll talk after. How about the innkeeper? You know, the one that looked at Joseph and Mary with a sad face and said, I'm really, really sorry, but there's no room for you in the inn? Was there an innkeeper? There was no innkeeper. You know why? Because an innkeeper in those days was not necessary, because the inns were not like, we have an alarm going off, but it's just a motion, so don't worry about it. The inns in that day were not like a Comfort Inn and Suites. If you look up, you miss a lot when you don't, and I don't know Greek or Hebrew, but often, you know, and you need to pray this when you're studying the Word of God and you're reading through things, ask God to like highlight and have words that are important to dig a little deeper in. Ask Him to help you to have them jump off the page. And then it's so much easier than it used to be. When I was in college, I had a book that was that thick. It was so heavy, it wouldn't even fit in today's modern day backpack. It was a Strong's exhaustive concordance. Now all you have to do is Google Hebrew for this word in such and such a scripture. An inn was actually a guest room back in those days, in someone's home. It wasn't like a Comfort Inn and Suite. So there was no need for anyone to be at the front desk when you walked in to see if there was room for you, right? So as a result of that, there was no innkeeper. The manger, there was a manger, but how many of you picture the manger as being some cute wooden thing that was made by a carpenter, and it was kind of like a feeding trough, but we picture this wooden thing, right? If you look up, if you Google manger, you will see a lot of that, but you'll also see stone feeding troughs, and that probably is what Jesus was laid in. And besides, the manger that you see a lot of hay in, have any of you tried to lay in hay? It's not really that comfortable. So the manger, yes, it was there, but it was probably more like a stone feeding trough, not real becoming of a king to be able to be laid in there on his day of birth. Speaking of Jesus' birthday, it was very likely that he was not even born during the month of December. Who did that? You did that? From way back there? That was awesome. That was not even rehearsed. I didn't pay him. I didn't buy him a Christmas gift or anything. I shook his hand this morning for the first time in I don't know how long. Good to see you. Thanks for participating. Jesus' birthday was likely not even during the month of December. There were shepherds in their fields watching their flocks that night, right? It would have been too cold. I checked it. Sometimes when I read stuff, I gotta fact check it. So I was like, you know, what are the temperatures typically at night in Israel during this time of day? It would have been too cold. Not to mention the fact that why were Joseph and Mary headed to Bethlehem? Because they pay their taxes, right? To check in. No government in their right mind would schedule a tax collection day, would schedule a census to happen during the most difficult time of year to travel. Is any of this a big deal? No, probably not. Because at the end of the day, Jesus was born, right? So you can remove all of that stuff from the nativity set. You can remove all of that stuff from the video. And it's interesting, but it really doesn't change the fact that Jesus was born. And that's the reason that we celebrate Christmas, right? So why did I share any of this with you? I shared this with you, and this is really important to pay attention to, because it's important to note that at times, the pictures that we hold in our minds that we believe are true and real are really false and inaccurate. And in this case, it doesn't really change the story. But if we allow pictures in our minds that are really false and inaccurate, if we allow ourselves to believe that they're true, that they're real, it could have major consequences, yes? So that's why I took all that time to get through my first page of notes. How many of you remember when you were a few years younger? And when you were like in your teen years, and you had these pictures in your mind of what life would look like when you got older, right? And now the majority of us that are in this room are a little older than older. And I have a question for you. How did that work out for you? How many would say better? How many would say worse? Depends what you're talking about, right? There are some things that I picture when I was a teenager that turned out worse. I thought it was going to be so cool to have a car and to be able to get freedom, but what comes with a car? Insurance costs and rubber tires and all this other stuff. And I've also had some other pictures in mind in reference to, I've always wanted to have 3 kids. I've got 3 kids. They turned out better than I could ever expect. And I will give that credit to the Lord, first of all, to my wife second. And yes, I had something to do with it. But there are some things that I pictured, and I'm just so thankful that it didn't turn out the way that I pictured. There's other things that I pictured that, it could have gone the other way. Some of you in here are still in, how many of you are in your teen years still? How many of you guys are like, Pastor David, of course. That's all you older people raising your hands. Do we have any teenagers in here or no? Okay, we have a few. Okay, so if you're in your teen years, you're probably you've already pictured in your mind, I'm looking at you because you're the only hand that I saw, and I'm not going to call you out and ask you to come forward. You're probably thinking about what life will look like when you get older, aren't you? Are you dreaming? Yeah? Are you planning? No? Well, that's okay. When you have a really good dream, you'll start to plan. And you're not the only one. And listen, I get it. And any of you that are teenagers in here, you can't wait for this. You can't wait for that. And it seems like life goes by so slowly. But don't rush life. And don't get too impatient, because mark my words, you're going to hit 25, and you're going to blink a couple times, and you're going to be 35, and then you're going to be 50, and time seems to speed up and get quicker. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dreaming. The Lord wants us to dream, but let's go back. We got these pictures of getting our driver's license, our first car. How many of you remember getting engaged and then getting married? How about working at your dream job and making lots of money, or being a starting quarterback in the NFL? That was one of my dreams. And then anybody remember BJ and the Bear? And then I watched BJ and the Bear, and I wanted to become a truck driver. And then I wanted to help people, so I wanted to be a police officer. But when we lived in Chittenango, we had a neighbor who was a police officer, and we were friends with their kids, and I was like, I listened to them talk about if their dad was going to come home at night. I'm like, nah, I don't want to be a police officer. Any of you remember back about having 3 kids that turned out perfect? So perfect that they were totally different, and they were so much easier than you were for your parents? Maybe for some of you, life turned out better than you pictured years ago. And maybe for others, it didn't come together at all like you planned. But either way, I think if we're honest, we'll agree that we've all had aspects of our lives that have turned out a little bit different than we pictured. So I have a couple of key questions, and I just want you to write these down in your mind, because these questions are really, really important, regardless of your age. Where did you get your picture from? Where did you get the picture in your mind of what life was supposed to look like when you got older? Did you get that picture from watching your friends? or from watching your friends' friends? Or did you get that picture from your favorite TV show or your favorite movie? Maybe you got it from circumstances surrounding your family, and you just vowed that it would be so much better. Or did you get your picture from Facebook? Most of us didn't, because we're too old for that when we were younger. Or did you get your picture from Instagram? Or did you get your picture from God and His Word? Those are very important questions. And where did you get your picture of God? You can ask all those same questions. Where did you get your picture from God? And what if your picture of God is actually wrong? What is your picture of Christmas? And where did you get that picture? These are all really important questions to ask ourselves and to think about, because how many of you know that if we use the wrong data to form the pictures that we hold in our minds, that we will inevitably set ourselves up for failure, disappointment, and a world of hurt? We have to be super, super, super careful, especially nowadays. I mean, it used to be, when I was in college, I didn't have a computer. I had a typewriter. When I was in college, I didn't have the ability to pick up a cell phone and call my parents. I had to call my parents collect, and I had to stand there at a payphone with everybody else and their mother in the laundry room listening to me talk to my parents. And I had to listen to the operator interrupt me and tell me to drop, I think it was dimes still at that time, and now it's quarters, in a payphone. Where was I going with this? I don't know where we were going with this, so we're going to move on. My first scripture, Proverbs 16, verse 9, says, "In their hearts, humans plan their course, but it is the Lord that establishes their steps." The Lord wants us to dream. There's nothing wrong with dreaming. He wants us to plan. He wants us to set goals. He wants us to take action. He wants us to move towards our future in a way that we feel that we need to. He's designed us with minds to think, and He has given us a free will to make wise choices in life. But how many of you know that sometimes God's picture is different than ours? And really, it shouldn't surprise us all that much, because as you read through the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, but even in the New Testament, almost every character that I have thought about along lines of this message has had to go through this. And it was the same deal for a couple of characters in the Christmas story. And the text that I'm going to be reading out of today is in Matthew chapter 1. And in Matthew chapter 1, we're not going to go through, although the genealogy is important. I'm not going to read all of that to you. But in Matthew chapter 1, we see God interrupt Joseph and Mary's plans. How many of you know that Joseph and Mary had plans? They were engaged to be married, right? And God has a different picture for them. So He interrupts them. And in Matthew 1, verse 18, it says, "And this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph." And I'm not going to talk about that word pledged or anything today because I don't want to take the time. But just so you know, an engagement back then was a lot more serious than an engagement is today. And you can do your own study on that. How many of you remember being engaged? What an exciting time of life it was. I can remember like it was yesterday, although it was 31 years ago that my wife and I got married. 31 years ago, 9 days ago. We've been married 31 years. And that's not as long as some of you, but it's a lot longer than most of you. And I'm so thankful for that. But I remember getting engaged to my beautiful wife and the crazy excitement of that time. Are you proud of me, Diana? I didn't tell them that we were only engaged for 26 hours. You don't have, your microphone's not on. Keep him muted for the rest of the service, please. But we remember being engaged, right? Matthew 1, verse 18 says, so Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. You know what that means, right? Coming together? If you don't, you can ask your mom after the service. So Joseph finds out that his fiancée is pregnant, and he knows for a fact that this baby is not his child. It had been such an exciting time in their lives. They were preparing for a ceremony with friends and with family. They were about to begin and establish a new life that they had probably been thinking about for a couple of years. And bam, God throws them a curveball. And I wonder how many of us are living in a scene this Christmas season that isn't making sense. You're living in a scene that you never in your wildest imagines would have pictured years ago living in. And maybe it is because God sent it, like with Joseph and Mary. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it just happened because life often is unfair. And because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, and yet he did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind, he had been thinking about this. He got this news, and it was all over his mind. He had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. And Joseph was probably like, why couldn't you told me that 6 months ago, God? I mean, she's got a ring on her finger now. It would have been a whole lot easier. And why did you wait until after we've made our plans to interrupt them? And Joseph, I don't think, is really way out in left field with any of this, is he? Have any of you ever questioned God? Raise your hand so everybody can see you. Have any of you questioned why he does things the way he does things? Have any of you questioned, maybe it was right, but maybe his timing is way off? We've all questioned that. Colossians 1, verses 16 and 17 says, for by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things. Do you know what all things means? It means you and me. You and I were created by him, and we were created for him. So as fun as Christmas can be for us, we have to keep in mind that it's not about us. It's okay to get presents. It's okay to give presents. You know how to spell those words, right? That word is presents. But really, it's all about his presence. Presence. That is what Christmas is all about. And I'm not reading my notes. I was supposed to say, and that's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. Christmas is about his plan. It's about his purpose. And it's about his picture. So now, Joseph has this word from God to go by. And he says, and I've read it already, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what's in her is from me. That's the key. What's in her is from me. And if Joseph goes by his eyes and what he sees, and if he goes by his mind and what he thinks, and if he goes by his emotions and what he feels, then he's going to miss it. God tells him, I know, Joseph, it's not what you expected, but it's me. Put yourself in his shoes, because he's telling you and he's telling me the same thing. I know it's not what you expected, but it's from me. Again, I'm not suggesting that everything that you're going through in life is from God, because it's not. Life is unfair and it sucks sometimes. But there are times when God does things in our lives that we don't understand, and we would swear upside one pole and down another that it can't be God. How many of you have been talking to somebody about something, and you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt you were 100% right, there was no way you were wrong, only to find out that you were wrong? Sometimes God does things that they don't make sense. So maybe it is God, and maybe it's not. But I know it's not what you pictured, Joseph, but it's me. I know it's not what you expected, but it's me. I know it's not your preference, but it's me. I know it doesn't fit your tradition, but it's me. And I know that you feel lonely and that there are some missing pieces, but it's me. And God said this to Joseph, and he says the same thing to you. I gave you the pieces for the puzzle and for the picture that I have in mind for your life and also for my purpose. He says to Joseph, and he says to you, you've got all the right pieces, all the right gifts. You have the right temperament. You have the right character. You have the right personality. You have the right heart. But have any of you ever questioned why you are the way you are? Some pieces in your life that seem like they just don't fit. Some pieces in your life that drive you crazy and you can't get away with them. You can't get away from them for anything. Sometimes, and I'm not going to do it today, I promise you. Sometimes when I'm up here and I'm in front of people, I get a little emotional and choked up, and I do something that most men would say is not manly. And I cry. And to be honest with you, I don't care what man says about me. I can wear pink underwear if I want to, and I can feel completely fine. I'm serious. I don't care. But this crying thing drives me absolutely nuts. It drives me crazy. And I don't like it when I do that, because it's hard for me to do that and at the same time to get my words out. So now I'm not saying anything, and I'm just standing up here crying, and everybody's looking at me like, what the heck is his problem? And I don't get nervous about this anymore because it's happened so many times. But I do still struggle with it because of the pressure that I feel from what I perceive in my mind to be missing pieces in my life. Well, why couldn't I be like Pastor such and such? Why can't I just keep it together? Why can't I be more composed? But it's hard for me. And that makes it hard on people like Rich Papaleo and David Dinsmore, because they're criers too. David's on security, so he didn't hear this, so you're going to have to tell him. But when I start to cry, they start to cry, and it's this big manly cry fest, and it's hard, but it's harder for me because I'm the one that's up here, and you don't see them. So I wanted to make you aware I'm not the only man in this building that ever cries. And if you have a problem with that, we can go in the back room, and I can show you my pink underwear. I gotta stop getting off notes. And I ask myself, why do I have to be that way? It drives me crazy. I've tried everything. Sometimes I know it's going to happen. Most of the time I don't. And it just comes out of the blue, and it just takes me by surprise. And I can't choke it down. I've tried to bite my tongue off. I've tried so many different things. I've tried to cry for a half hour before I knew I was going to have to do it in public, and it still didn't work. But you know what I finally come to realize? I finally come to realize that even though I don't understand it, this must be a piece of the puzzle that God deposited in me. So why fight it? I'm not going to not come up here and speak when the Lord wants me to come up here and speak because I'm afraid of looking like a pansy was the word I had, but wussy will do. Because what's in me is from him. And even though I don't understand why, if he put it there, it must have a purpose for him. So what I need to do is to just trust him with it. And I definitely need to be true to who I am and who he wants me to be. Can any of you relate to any of this? So in verse 21, Matthew gives us both Mary's and Joseph's job in the story. And she will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus. So I want to take a quick vote here, and we're not going to spend a lot of time with this, but I want you to think about who had the harder job. And if you're married and your spouse is here, I want you to be very careful before you vote. How many of you think that Mary had the harder job? Raise your hand. How many of you think that Joseph had the harder job? Raise your hand. Which one of those would you rather do? Would you rather give birth? Maybe it's not as bad as they say. I love when you play into stuff for me. Or would you rather give the name? But, so physically, there's no argument, right? Give the name. Duh. So much easier. But let's think a little bit deeper about this for a minute. The difference between Mary and Joseph is that Mary knew, but Joseph didn't. Mary knew that it had to be God because it was her body. And because she consulted her experience and she knew that she had never been with another man. And she knew she didn't feel right. And in time, she started having this thing kicking inside of her. She knew that she had never been with another man, so this absolutely had to be God. Right? Joseph didn't know. And he would never really know. So he had to believe. And I wonder if maybe that's the hardest job of all, to believe what you can't see. To believe what you can't be sure of. And to believe what you can't prove. Yeah, believe what you're told. And my guess is Joseph would probably live the rest of his life halfway wondering. At the end of the day, he took Mary home. But I'm a man. This had never been done before, and it's never been done since. So if you think that Joseph never questioned after he took her home, you're probably very wrong. Mary knew that it had to be God. But Joseph didn't, because faith does not operate by sensory knowledge. And therein lies much of our problem. And so it has always been with every human being that puts more stock and more attention to the things that we see and feel and touch with our physical senses rather than our spirituality and our faith. There are some things that can only be seen and understood by faith. Matthew goes on, and all this took place. Everything that you didn't picture, everything that you didn't understand, all of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 7, verse 14. And then he goes on to quote, "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel," which means God with us. So I'm going to attempt to do a little object lesson here. And I want to talk about the tech team for a minute. One of their responsibilities back there is to put the sermon online for the video. And there's a switcher, who I believe the switcher is Tom back there, right? And then we've got a couple of cameramen, Matthew, and who's behind that one? Mr. Watson. And the switcher is the one that calls the shots between the two cameramen. And I think we have a camera over here too that points kind of down at Stephen or Julia or whoever in the keyboard. So we have 3 cameras that switch back and forth. And you won't notice this a lot right now, but you'll notice it a little bit more during worship. But the people that are running the cameras, they're to follow the cues of the switcher for what shots they want to take and to keep the target, whatever the target might be, in the center of the screen or the center of the picture. So I'm going to ask you guys to give me a wide shot so you're not looking at the back of my head. Okay, there's a wide shot. This one is really not used during the message that much. It typically is used during worship. Why? Because there's a lot more activity going on the stage. There's a lot more people, a lot more instruments. There's a lot more transitions, people coming up on the stage, people coming off of the stage. Now, if you can zoom in and give me a tight shot. And then if I step over here, you're supposed to be following me. I started this by saying, let's show them what you're supposed to do. It's okay. He wasn't here when I went through this morning. And I was thinking about just turning into a Tasmanian devil and running around up here really fast, so you went crazy, but I'm not going to do that. Now you can take your hands off of it, Mr. Watson, and I want you to sit on them and take a nap for a minute, okay? Everyone else, you're laughing at him, but listen to this. I want you to watch the screen, okay? Now, sometimes God does this. Watch the screen. Watch the screen. Let's try it again. Sometimes, I'm in there, right? God does this. Don't look at me. Some of you were. You disobedient people. Watch the screen. The people that are doing this online, it's very easy for them. Watch the screen. Now, the only conclusion that you could come to if you were using your eyes is that the person that was in the picture has left the room. And the only way for you to know that I'm still here is to go not by what you see, but to go by what you hear. So right now, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're watching the screen, then you can't see me, but you know that I didn't leave you because you can still hear my voice. And so even when I don't feel him, he's with me because his name is Emmanuel. I can't see him, but I trust him because I know that he spoke it and I will see it with the eyes of my faith. Watch the screen. And he's with me in my good days, and he's with me in my bad days. And he's with me when they like me, and he's with me when I feel all alone. And he's with me when I know what I'm doing. And he's with me when I don't even have a clue. And he's with me when I'm married. And he's with me when I'm divorced. And he's with me when I've got a job. And he's with me when I'm broke. And he's with me when I'm well. And he's with me when I'm sick. And he's with me on a sunny day. And he's with me in the storm. So be strong and courageous, and do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord goes with you, and he will never leave you, and he will never forsake you. And I've been listening to a song all week that says, even when I don't see it, you're working. And even when I don't feel it, you're working. So I'm going to ask the worship team to come up and to begin to play that song as we close. And while they're coming and beginning to play, I want to give you two very brief but super key points as we begin to close the service. Number one, Jesus came to us through someone and in a way that everyone else thought was insignificant. He was not born in the best and the cleanest hospital in the world. He did not grow up in a palace. He did not come through a matriarch. But he was born to a little girl who was so scared that when the angel came and told her what was going to happen, her response was, "How can this be?" And he wants you to know that there is nothing insignificant about you, and that there is also nothing insignificant about the pieces that he deposited in your life at conception. He has made you just the way you are for a reason. He says in Ephesians 2, verse 10, that you are his masterpiece. That God created you anew in Jesus so you could do the things that he planned for you long ago. So I don't care who you are, or what your name is, or where you came from, or what you've been through. Jesus wants you to know that you are extremely valuable to him, and that he has placed every single piece inside of you to be used in great and powerful ways. And he did that for a reason. It wasn't an accident. Why did he go to Joseph and why did he go to Mary? Why did he choose them? He chose them because he knew that they would live with the pieces and that they would play the pieces that he put in their lives if he asked them to. You have everything that you need. Everything. You're not missing anything. You cannot build somebody else's picture with your pieces any more than they can build yours with theirs. So don't call your pieces insignificant, because they are not. The devil would lie to you, and he would cause you to use your physical senses to think that you're missing pieces, or to think that the pieces that are there really should have been given to someone else. But we need to open the eyes of our faith and understand that nothing inside of us is there by accident. Number 2, he came in a way that was impossible. I said it before, this had never happened before, and it has never happened since. It was a virgin womb. It was impossible for this to happen. Why did he do that? He did it because God wanted to let you know that impossible situations are the places where faith is born. So if it's impossible for you, then it's fertile ground for God. He didn't have to come that way, but he wanted you to know that if you're living in a scene and you are facing something that looks and feels impossible, you need to open the eyes of your faith, grab hold of a word from the Lord, believe it, and by faith it will come to pass. So I want us to take a moment and to make room for the Lord to minister to you. I'm not going to call anyone up front because I felt the Lord say this is important. It's a one-on-one time. It's you as an individual, and it's him. He wants to do something in you so that he can do something through you. And this morning, he doesn't need anyone to do that except you. So I'm going to ask you, as we sing this song, to make your seat an altar. You can stand, you can sit, you can kneel. I don't care what your posture is, and to be honest with you, God doesn't either. He's more concerned about the posture of your heart. You can sing if you want to, or you can just sit there quietly and allow the worship team to sing over you. And if you don't have anything that's going on in your life that's really, really heavy, I bet you know somebody that does. And I'm going to ask you to stand in the gap for them. So let's use this time. And then once we're done, Kata will come up and close the service. But I want to challenge every one of you just to open the eyes of your faith. I want to challenge you to empty yourself and to give him an opportunity to pour into you this morning. Amen.
You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You make a way. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, it's who you are. You're making ways in the wilderness. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. 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 Oh, it's who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Making ways in the wilderness. That is who you are. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You bring healing, you bring deliverance. It's just who you are. It's just who you are. You bring healing, you bring deliverance. It's just who you are. It's just who you are.
Well, while Pastor Ron was talking, I just started to see the word who. And if you see that word and visualize it, it's W-H-O. H-O. And if you turn it around, it's also how, H-O-W. So there is a who in the how. And so we just need to really focus on who. When we're questioning how, we have to focus on who. And that's the Lord, and he directs our way, and he works it out. He'll know how.
Actually, that goes in line with something that happened for me recently. I was asking the Lord, I was stressing out about something and asking him what I should do. And I'd been flipping around in the Gospels, and when I was kind of settled down, I looked down on a verse in Mark 8 where it says, anyone who wishes to follow me must deny himself and take up his cross. But what stood out to me was follow me, just the phrase follow me. And I just felt like I saw the Lord smiling at me and just said, follow me. You just follow me, and he'll show us how. This is a good word. Thank you, Kathy.